Thanks. Okay, that's the word coming in from Sunil Singhania. Let me now shift focus and talk about what's happening in the infrastructure theme. Will the current growth really translate into a super CAPEX upcycle? Will the PLI scheme lead to better investment? To chat about all of this, we have with us Vinayak Chatterjee, the chairman at Feedback Infra, coming in on the show. Vinayak, hi, good morning. Good to have you on the show. Wish you a very happy new year from all of us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be back in the new year with ET Now. So happy new year to all of you.
Thank you so much. Vinayak, the market is very excited going into the budget and especially awaiting some infrastructure announcements as well. What policies do you think can we expect from the government this time around?
Look, the big elephant in the room, so far as budget expectations are concerned, is very heavy lifting on infrastructure projects and public works. And if you see today's newspapers, both the Business Standard and Financial Express actually carry headline articles about the concept of a DFI, a development financial institution or a development finance bank dedicated to infra, gathering traction and likely to be probably the biggest budget announcement for the sector. So that is actually good news for the market, because you will actually have to see this in context. The revival of the economy, very, very simply put, depends on two engines firing: consumption expenditure and investment expenditure. Now, on consumption expenditure, there is very little that the government can do other than to announce policies that increase sentiment and push cash into the hands of the bottom of the pyramid. So that revival of consumer spending is dependent on millions and millions of people deciding to buy things or not. So the real trigger, which is in the hands of the government of the day, is capital expenditure, infrastructure spend, and public works. So having said that, I think the real issue is to understand also the limitations of the budget. Remember, the first 6 months of this fiscal saw a 27% collapse of capital expenditure over last year. It is from the months of October, November, December that CAPEX started increasing at a pace higher than last year. So my bet is that we will probably end the year with about 15%, 10 or 15% over last year. Now, last year was 3.37 lakh crores. And if we end even 20% higher on that, we are still going to be less than the budget estimates of this year. So the point I'm making is that this time, the budget figures and more importantly, the budget announcements have to do two kinds of heavy lifting. One, it has to make up for the lost year, which is the COVID year. And secondly, it has to double its efforts to revive the economy, which has gone into a deep slumber, particularly on the investment side. Now, the private sector is unlikely to be making, any major investments in this fiscal year. People in the manufacturing sector will raise capacity utilization. And on infrastructure sector, I don't think balance sheets and boards of any companies are in a hurry to invest in PPP mode in infra now. So the real issue is that the last year's budget estimate was 4.12 lakh crores, right? Even assuming that let's assume for a moment, it's scenario casting. Let's assume for a moment that the FM takes a bold step and increases fiscal deficit by 2% and says, I'm going to now allocate this 2% for infra and public works. Remember, 1% fiscal deficit is 2 lakh, increase in fiscal deficit is 2 lakh crores, right? So even if you increase by 2%, it is 4 lakh crores. So assuming that last year's level of 4 lakh crores, 4 lakh crores is added, you still have 8 lakh crores. Now, why am I giving you so much maths? If on a very positive note, if you absorb the figure that the maximum capacity of the union budget is to do 4 lakh crores of last year, plus with a reduction of 2% fiscal deficit, another 4 lakh crores this year. So you reach a figure of 8 lakh crores allocation, which is double of last year, by the way. So nobody can accuse the FM of not, shall we say, pulling the right lever. Doubling last year will be a major step, but is that enough? Now, absorb the figure of 8 lakh crores. For a minute, push it aside. Let's look at the national infrastructure pipeline. The average spend per annum, 111 lakh crores in 5 years divided by 5 is 20 lakh crores per annum. The maximum capacity of the budget, maximum, is 8 lakh crores. So you're short of 12 lakh crores even to meet the stated objective of the National Infrastructure Plan. The moot point is, obviously, part of it, 3-4 lakh crores will be made up by states, by PSUs, and some minimal private investment. You have a humongous funding deficit of my assumption of anywhere up to 8 to 10 lakh crores. So the point is that the budget, it is imperative for the budget this year to make an announcement about a major off-budget financing vehicle. And the big discussion right now is it's going to be a DFI. It is going to be a bank for the funding of one of major infrastructure projects. And with a funding of 1 lakh crore seed capital from the budget, it should be able to catalyze 10, 12 crores or even more, depending on the multiple it chooses for leveraging. And as a sovereign, it can go, there are no limits. So that is really, to sum up, the very, very big ticket item in this budget. The union budget by itself cannot meet the national infrastructure pipeline target of 20 lakh crores per annum. The maximum it can do is 8 lakh crores. 12 lakh crores will have to be found somewhere. Partly it will be found in states, PSUs and private sector. The bulk of it has to come in the years ahead from a DFI. But let me stop here today because I think I have given a lot of maths to your viewers, but I've tried to paint a broader picture as to what the total macro situation looks like so far as infrastructure funding is concerned. Let me stop here.
Okay, indeed, a lot of food for thought there, Vinayak, as always. One wouldn't expect anything else from you. But two things, Vinayak, which are going to have a bearing on how the infrastructure cycle actually pans out, or the CAPEX cycle. High commodity prices. We've seen that with steel, cement, etc., which are big inputs for infrastructure cost, and the increase in real estate transactions as well, if sustained. How do you think these two are going to play out when we are talking about the CAPEX cycle recovery or the infrastructure recovery?
Look, I completely agree with you that right now steel and cement prices are causing concern. More than cement, actually, it is very dramatic increase in steel prices of around 52% from February onwards, which has thrown a lot of project economics out of gear. Let me not get into that because the government is aware, whether it is related to foreign trade or whether it's related to iron ore prices, there are a lot of theories. But the point is that commodities go through cycles. So I am probably not well placed to comment on commodity cycles, but I will comment on the fact that most of the discussions in the media and in seminars is about infrastructure financing. But you can finance only if there is a project. Now, let's look at the national infrastructure pipeline of 20 lakh crores and assume for a minute that each infrastructure project has a developmental cycle of 4 years, which is very reasonable, which means you have to create it's a funnel. You require 20 into 4, 80 lakh crores of projects being cooked so that in a funnel situation, you are able to have shovel-ready projects which can absorb investment of 20 lakh crores per annum. So the question is also the capacity of the country to be able to conceptualize and take up for construction 20 lakh crores worth of projects a day from a funnel of 80 lakh crores. There aren't that many projects. So increasingly, I would urge people like you in the media and other commentators to not just focus on infrastructure financing and the budget, but ask the fundamental question. Are there 80 lakh crores of projects which are being conceived, of which 20 lakh crores are shovel ready in the next fiscal? The answer as of now is no. And therefore, as much as there are discussions about finance, there has to be a discussion about a very dedicated group. And I have argued at different fora that we need to create a very high-powered infrastructure investment group attached to the PMO that will oversee cutting across central ministries, reaching out to state governments, removing hurdles and clearances required, synergizing the interests of all concerned. It requires a dedicated national effort, not just for financing, but to create 80 lakh crore pipeline of new projects. So I hope the budget or outside the budget, the government applies its mind to creating a very high-powered, effective infrastructure project creation or management group that oversees project development. Otherwise, you might have the finance ready with this new DFI and all that, and you'll be sitting and twiddling your thumbs with no projects to finance. But let me stop here.
Vinayak, a very quick question, purely based on the anecdotal data. Cement dispatch numbers, power consumption, steel demand, and commitment and indications which are coming from an Ultratech or an Hindalco, from an Adani to an Reliance. Where is the demand and optimism coming from? If the CAPEX was low, government spending was poor, economy was not picking up, where is this optimism coming from? Because it appeared like a pent-up demand in the month of October, but now that pent-up demand has moved beyond pent-up demand to a structural demand.
So that's easy to explain. See, as I started off my conversation with you a little earlier, the first 5 months of the year was a 27% decrease in CAPEX, right? So it just fell flat. So the base went down. The base went down substantially. Then as COVID, lockdown, all of that started providing more and more relief in terms of unlockdown and activity starting, October, November, December has actually seen 10 to 15% increase in activity, in construction, in urban infrastructure, in roads, in irrigation. October onwards, we are seeing a 15% uptick in the growth. So that is where the optimism is coming from. So I hope that explains the point.
That's one part, sir. My second part is that for the first time I've heard companies talking about adding 10 to 15% incremental capacity. The comment I'm using Ultratech because that is an indication of a local commodity. Cement is a local commodity. They are saying that we are looking at increasing India's capacity by about 8 to 10% and our capacity by 30%. Cement is a long gestation business, which is you need 12 to 18 months or 18 months to 24 months before the capacity kicks in. Is there reason to believe that things are indeed picking up that frantically?
Look, I don't want to comment on the decision of individual companies and boards because at an entrepreneurial level, different people take different calls on the future. All I'm saying is that there is a structural movement upwards with the economy reviving. And if one just assumes that there is going to be a 13 to 15% increase in CAPEX as a sustained development, we are going to hit levels of increased demand of anywhere between 3 to 5 to 7% at least in the foreseeable future for these kind of infrastructure linked commodities, right? Now, if somebody takes a call that I'm going to invest in capacity today so that 3 years later, I'm able to cater to something else, that's a call of an entrepreneur, of an individual board. But I certainly see demand for these commodities increasing anywhere at a sustained level from 5 to 7 to 8%. It's up to individual companies to decide how they wish to attack this, see this opportunity. Some people also play for market share, as an objective. So even in a stagnant market, you might wish to invest if you're playing for market share. So who knows what the strategy is?
All right, Vinayak, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us this morning and sharing with us the latest developments in the space.